What's up everyone, this is Cher talking, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we're gonna make a full review for the Romancing Festival Ciato banner that brings Ciato, a rapier user that is a boss specialist but can be used on farming as well, Ildon, a slash and pierce specialist for critical damage, and Rastaban, a great sword user with access to support. We're gonna start with Ciato and he gives a name to the banner. He's the most important character here, maybe, depending on your account. Ciato is a pierce and slash damage dealer. He has very high dexterity, 170% being the highest one. His second most high status is agility with 95%. He has also bonuses for both status, so you can understand that he likes to go first and do good damage. His endurance is only 72%, but he does have some defense passives, so that is not that bad. His will is 86%, that means that he is actually a little better to deal damage against magical bosses, especially because mages are sometimes weak to pierce as well. He also has very high charisma because he can self-heal, so his status distribution is actually very good considering that he aims for many different status. And if you want to find arrows for the other status like endurance, will and charisma, you just have to train with his S style. Pretty easy to get what you want. Now, let's talk about passives. Since Ciato is a mystic, he has a very common mystic passive that has 25% on the start of a turn to buff all status by 20% and also recover BP by 3. When you consider that on average you get at least one trigger every 4 turns, the final result is actually nice. When you get 3 BP every 4th turn on average, it will allow him to use some cycles faster. Then the second passive is called Ambitions. This was changed in Global. He triggers this 3 times in a fight on the start of a turn, granting himself 15% hit on each turn, reaching 45 on turn 3, getting himself also 10% defense up, reaching as much as 30% on turn 3. Because it's on the start of a turn, he pretty fast gets this and can be game-changing in a boss fight because it reduces the damage he receives by 30, just like High Protect Tension, and we kinda like this type of passive, survive better, and he can also self-heal, so very easy to use. 45 hit up is also much better than High Protect Tension that only increases damage by 20%, but the trade-off is that you need 3 turns to reach that. Then we have Fired Up 6, increasing damage by 30%, so on the end he reaches 75 on max and reduces damage by 30% with a chance of buffing all status and getting 3 BP. Well, for skills we have Bloodsucker. For 1 BP you have a single target attack with the Power and 10 mod, but slash damage, yeah, because he is biting the enemy, he's a vampire, they changed the damage type. It also recovers his own HP by around 900 in current game because his charisma is pretty big. Very nice because he also has defense up, he receives less damage than most attackers, and by recovering you can place him on the front line of many formations and he won't take that much damage, while also be able to self-heal. The second skill is called Meteor Shade. This is a support spell that is also fast, uses 2 LP, that means that he can only use this 2 times in a fight, and grant him 3 evasions for the whole fight. But it also gives him a large effect stealth stance, that means that he will be less likely to get attacked. It's strange because if you want to evade, you want the boss to attack you. But even if you don't get attacked in the first or second turn, for example, this still lasts for the whole fight. It will be good if the damage is too high on the start of the fight, and you can just wait till defense up is fully stacked by turn 3, where you also have hit up on max potential and you start the fight for real. And even if you don't get the 6 hits, the evasions will still happen later, since, like I said, you will be less likely to get attacked and stealth even stacks, for example. But interesting nonetheless. The last skill is called Tiger Fan Dance. For 9 BP you have a single target attack with slash and pierce, double S damage. Nice that has slash and pierce because he is a rapier user, so he actually covers 2 damage types, and it will also buff his dexterity by 40%. He also gets stealth stance again by large effect. So you see that he doesn't like to get attacked, but even if he does, he can self-heal. Very nice if you are playing with someone else like Polka, for example, because he keeps taunting the enemies. Ciato will not get hit by many single target attacks, instead he will get hit by AoEs most of the time, so this can be helpful depending on the formation that you are using. And since he buffs dexterity, you can open with this attack and then use Bloodsucker or something else, right? And here represents something else. His S style has a skill called AP Blade for 0. You have a single target attack with Slash and Pierce, so you keep the trend. That buffs his dexterity by 25% on max level. Very nice. The damage will be similar to a normal attack, but well, you are always buffing dexterity with him if you choose to do so. You open with Tiger Fan Dance, keep using AP Blade, and if you get to trigger his Mystic Power, you can instantly cast Tiger Fan Dance again and keep switching between those two. You will cover both Slash and Pierce. Well, I know that Slash is a little hard, because many times we'll be using Leon to do slash damage with his chase attack, but he also does Pierce. A certain type of damage that has not that much competition, although there are plenty of boss specialists, but they are getting old. Darky is a very nice character as well, but Darky does have plenty of different styles and cycles. Reviving the guild now is very strong because buffs dexterity on the start of a turn when attacking, and can also import now from the Global X style Stamina back to buff dexterity 3 times in a single turn. Ciato cannot compete with Darky, at least on this regard, but gets close, is a little more defensive, and, well, only require one style to reach his full build. The second inheritance is called Stingray, a 6 BP cost, full AoE attack with deep power and 14 mod that will be amplifiable into at least C power with 20 mod. It's not that strong, we have attacks like Sword Ballet Plus that deals more, but at least he can use 2 times in a row, so if you need to level him up and the event only has multiple enemies, you can bring him with Stingray Plus. Remember that he also starts the fight with at least 45% increase. Second turn he already has 60, that's actually very strong. The last inheritance is Phantom Fall plus a 9 BP cost, single target attack with triple S power and 64 mod that is stronger than his Tiger Fan Dance, but only when you are farming, because you don't get the benefit of a dexterity buff on the end of a turn, because you already killed the enemy, right? Tiger Fan Dance, it's better on boss fights or if you want slash damage. Well, as you can see, Ciato is focused more on single target, and he does have at least 2 different rotations for boss fights and raids. The first, you open with Tiger Fan Dance, and then after that you use Bloodsucker. Here you will have a slash rotation with good sustain. On raids where you don't want to die fast, this is actually very good. But in boss fights you can also instead inherit AP Blade and keep both Pierce and Slash rotations. And if you want to do this on auto, you have to leave AP Blade with 1 BP to override Bloodsucker. And in raids where you want to die fast, this also works well. So, more damage, AP Blade. More sustain, Bloodsucker. This will also work very well in Remembrance, because he will not require a healer. He works well by himself, and his damage is actually very nice. So, if you're having difficulty with the Rapier Remembrance battles, he's gonna be strong for the time being, and even on future releases. But I still need to compare him to Darkid again, because if you already have Darkid, he is the best character, because, look, this version, Reviving the Guild, has a will buff as well, so when fighting against magical attacks, he's actually very good. And then, if it's against physical, Ciato will be a little better, because we have 3 defense ups, he will receive less damage and even has Bloodsucker to help. But some people will take benefit of using bolts on Death Master, but I don't think you need bolts if you are a player that only wants to summon on some specific banners to save gems. But if you can bring 2 damage dealers, they are gonna be very good together as well. With all that said, Ciato is a very cheap investment by only needing 1 style to perform well. But if you already have Darken and want to skip, it's pretty okay to do so. But Ciato, by being very strong and cheap to invest, will receive a high SS grade in our tier list. And the second one is Rastaban. He's a great sword user with access to shadow spells, and a real hybrid unit because he actually needs intelligence to attack. And it kind of hurts him since he needs STR and dexterity for damage and accuracy of physical, and agility intelligence for damage and accuracy of magical. That makes him live up with only 52 endurance, so you don't get top end of any sort of status here. Now, for passives, we have Mystic Power 3. On the start of a turn, we have a 25% chance to buff all of his status by 20% and recover 3 BP. On average, we have 3 BP every 4 turns and at least 1 buff in the middle. The second passive is called Ability Drain 2 Will. On the start of a turn, he has a 37% chance to reduce all enemies' will by 10% and increase all surviving alliance will by 10%. Yes, it's 10%, I even did some search. We have a similar character. We need to discuss this because it is Snowy. Snowy has this concentration and he buffs 20% will with 50% chance. It's a higher chance and a better buff, but he's only affecting our will. Rastaban also decreases enemies' will. I don't understand much why he does that because we use will debuffers when we want to inflict ailments, or if we are on an extremely hard challenge that the enemy has the same will and we cannot debuff, and debuff is the answer. I don't even know when this will happen again, so I don't think this has the same utility as Snowy. Snowy is a prime unit, and that method has been used in many boss fights. Another character that has something similar is Kylie. Kylie has here 25% chance to buff intelligence and will by 20%. See? A little different, less likely to buff, but he buffs intelligence and will, so offensive and defensive. Well, I think Kylie version is even better too. Moving on, the last passive is called High Protect Tension. We know this, increasing damage by 20% and reducing damage received by 30%. This is good because his endurance is pretty bad, nonetheless, and it will help him in boss fights if you actually bring him. Moving on for our skills, we have Bloodsucker, the same one as Ciato, 1 BP for the power, slash damage, and recovers HP. His charisma is not that high, he should be healing for around 800. But it's very good because if you need to be healed, you don't need to cast a heal spell on him. The second skill is exactly a spell called Flowering Plume Fall, a full AoE attack that grants morale down to the target, decreasing their damage output by 15% on the source. It needs to land in order to apply. It can be a problem with his bad accuracy. We have many morale down casters right now, with the best current one being Goddess, because she applies guard up on the same time and can keep up with the cycles. Well, if you got her, she has Heavenly Melody that it buffs morale down and casts guard up. If you don't have a better guard up, this is actually very nice. But there are other characters as well, like Rofa's global version. He has this as well. See, morale down and guard down, offensive and defensive. There is also Rock Bouquet with her version. She has Martini Ball, and there is also Melissa. All of these characters that I'm mentioning will be eventually replaced because their version of morale down is only small. We got a version that is medium that came from Doll, but Doll has a problem keeping up the full cycle as this style here. Thus, Kraken has morale down medium, but then she does not have enough BP all the time. She has to revert to morale down small. But in the future, we'll have characters that can apply morale down medium. It's a far future, but just so you know. And they can also keep up with the buffs. So, it's good because it lasts for 3 turns and it only costs 6. That means that he will always have at least 3 BP as spare, and he can also trigger his Mystic Power. And if he really needs to be healed, you can use Bloodsucker, for example. Now, the last attack is called Tiger Swipe. For 8 BP, you have a full AoE attack with slash and shadow damage, but only the power, because of the cost they decreased the power. And when the attack lands, there is a chance to debuff Endurance and Will by 20% on max level. Well, he has a chance to debuff enemies' will, right? It's 37% chance to debuff 10%, and he can debuff another 20 here. In this case, you can say that he is an AoE version of what you can do with Ruby. We got plenty of will debuffers recently, but Ruby has a Firehead attack that debuffs 15% will, and then she has Misfortune Telling, 50% chance of debuffing will by 15%. Her max value is 30% on a turn, and that is the same value as Rastaban can get. He can get 30% if he triggers both passive and active. The only problem, like I said, is that his status does not contribute so well depending on the boss fight. He may suffer, but since he can trigger on the start of a turn, decreasing will already, this will allow him to have higher chances of getting Tiger Swipe to trigger. So another character has a full UE 20%. The buff is Maximus, but Maximus, as you can see, debuffs will on the start of the round by 10%, and he then debuffs will another time by 20%, but he has problem keeping up with the debuffs. Rastaban is a little better because of his only 8 BP cost. After Tiger Swipe, we can inherit from his S style, Shrill. That is actually a very nice skill. This one comes from Wicked Witch. We have Wicked Witch as another very good will debuffer, but she only has this skill to debuff will, so 15% every turn. While Rastaban can just, get his passive to trigger as well. But as you see, there's a problem here. He opens with a physical skill that uses STR and Dexterity, and then revert into using magical spells that uses Agility and Intelligence. So that means that it's kinda hard to place him in some formations unless they don't buff primary status, and he may miss with one or the another, or you may need to bring buffers to increase, Dexterity, Agility, and Intelligence. So there's at least this problem. For other inheritance, he has Ultrasonic Wave, a 7 VP full AoE attack that has a chance to apply Confusion when attack lands. Well, Ultrasonic Wave is not that rare, actually it's also on Saruin, only on Global this was changed. So Saruin has it by its S style, and in the future we have a Remembrance battle where we need to apply either Confusion or Charm on enemies in order to make it much easier. And if you already have Saruin, you are pretty set. But if you don't, I think you get more value out of Rastaban because of this. In JP, it was the only character capable of this on release. And then the last inheritance is Swallow Reversal Plus, an APP attack that has triple S damage and slash damage, critical against flying, and also grants defense down to the targets, decreasing their defenses by 15% that lasts for 3 turns. The good thing, defense down is much better than guard down because this thing stacks. You can even apply 2 times with the same character to increase the damage output of your other attackers. But there are plenty of characters with access to Swallow Reversal plus Katarina, there is Soji, there is also M Black, so you have alternatives as well. You can open with Swallow Reversal if you want, and then leave skill number 2 and skill number 3 on Nate, and he will forget the skills exist on auto, and then cycle between Swallow Reversal and Bloodsucker. If he gets Mystic Power to trigger on turn 1, he will even use Swallow Reversal 2 times. This works on raid, kinda. It will increase the damage output of other people and keep him alive when he uses Bloodsucker. Or you can open with his Tiger Swipe or Flowering Plume Fall, you choose, and then inherit Shrill and use Shrill as long as you don't have enough BP, and then revert back to either Flowering Plume Fall or Tiger Swipe. But here, like I said, those 2 attacks are not that important going for the future. Unless you really need the AoE will debuff, you don't have many reasons to use this cycle. He's not exactly a real damage dealer, and he's more of a support unit that can kinda help you in Remembrance battles, but there are better alternatives, and this character has no future style, he is what you see. I don't think he offers too much to justify his existence, hence why he will receive a very low double S grade and eventually be demoted to only S in our tier list. And the last character from the banner is Ildon. We had half Mystic Guardian, now there is perfectly stylish. The past version is a little better for long fights because of the status distribution and passives. Perfectly stylish is a farmer, and you see when comparing boats, we have bigger STR, 170% being the highest one in the game right now. They like this number. We lost endurance, 12 points, and then dexterity as well. It's just enough for farming, but not that big for bossing. Agility is 101%, so he wants to attack first. His intelligence is almost the same, he got a little better will, but to be honest, none of them are really good for boss fight. It's just that the past version can still trigger Mystic Power and has a little better endurance, but both still pretty squishy nonetheless. But this Ildon has utility against the Real Queen. In the future we get even harder stages of the Real Queen and he can paralyze, so there's that. This Ildon here is totally focused on doing damage and doing damage fast, as it can be seen by having arrows for both STR and agility and bonuses to those two as well, but you still get higher STR with his past style. Now moving for passives, the first one is called Critical Knowledge 4. All of his attacks will become critical to humans and beastmen. Well, there are plenty of events where enemies are humans, beastmen not as much, but they do appear from time to time. Events where we fight against the same characters that we use will mostly be human, but not all of them. It also increases critical damage by 30%, so yeah, he's a critical specialist. The second one, called High Lethal Tension. This one increases damage by 20% at all times, and then another 30% on critical attacks. And the last one, Fired Up 6, increasing damage at all times by 50%. So it's actually a pretty simple calculation here. We get 50% at all times and 110% against critical weak enemies. We saw something like this before with M-Black. M-Black, past style. This one was also designed like this, but he will only add critical against humans. Now we have critical against beastmen as well, so there's this small difference here. And Ildon has bigger damage potential than the Zen Black. And when comparing to his past version, he had 40% at all times and 70% when doing critical attacks, so it's a upgrade, especially when farming. As for our skills, the first one is called Mirage Step Plus, a 3 BP full AoE attack that is an amplify over an old skill that was used for quite some time, that has a chance to debuff intelligence by 15% on max level. Well, a chance, and you need to focus on that, because his intelligence is actually pretty bad on 78% only. Mirage Step was noted because of Oculus. We have it on her face in the final battle style, that, well, it's pretty old now, and the New Year style has the highest intelligence so far with 101%. And even this version of Oculus can miss, because some bosses have such a high will that you need to bring a buffer in order to fix this problem. And with Ildon, you have even more difficulty debuffing. So, I believe that if you really need Mirage Step to debuff, you may even be better bringing the old style that has a little extra intelligence, but a chance to buff his own intelligence here and there. But as a full AoE attack, kinda works because can be used at any time. The second skill is called Lantern Path. For 5 VP, you have a row attack that deals slash and pierce damage with 8 power and 29 mod, while also critical against undead and demon. We already have critical against human and beastmen as well, so 4 different types. Some demons are weak to slash, many undeads are weak to pierce, most humans are weak to slash, many beastmen are also weak to at least one of those. So it will cover plenty of different scenarios. And remember, the first full AoE attacks we got in the game had like 13 VP cost, eventually they got reduced to 12, then eventually to 10, now most of them have 9 VP cost. And Lantern Path costs only 5, That means you can use this 3 times in a row. So Ildon will be able to solo farm some stages in main story, but some events too. And even if he's not capable of, you can pair him up with another row specialist like this Cordelia here, call it It's Safe This Way. She's Platinum, and she has 2 options of row attacks, a big nuke or a weaker version that will just help finish. You can just bring them both in an Amazon Raid Axe formation and they will work well. But then it requires the stage to be aligned in a row. Not all the time, but there are events that are like that. And he only takes full damage potential when the enemies are either human, beastman, undead, or demon. If they are not, he has at least 50% increase in damage. Will work well, still, but will lose the solo potential. Now, the last one is called Noble Cranes, and it's double the BP cost, now 10, and deals the same mod, same elemental types, and same critical effects. It's essentially the same skill, but now hitting everyone. It's nice because, well, sometimes you only have one wave in an event, and you can just open with Noble Cranes, and if you hit their critical, that means you get big damage, and he can keep up using Mirage Step Plus, for example. But Mirage Step Plus will only critical human and beastman. So he opens with big damage, but you may need a secondary character to finish the second wave instead of him. So, a full AoE cycle with Noble Cranes, a full row cycle with Lantern Path, 2 different cycles for farming. Now, if you don't want to attack on turn 1, you have another character like Arthur, for example, and he can take care of the first wave. You can inherit from his S style, Tornado Blade Plus. This is a full AoE attack with double S power and 48, that's pretty big, also critical against flowing enemies. It will carry out the critical against human and beastmen as well, so if you hit them, it will do plenty of damage. Now, from his past premium style, you can also import Rosario Impale Plus. This is also critical against undead and demons. And it's a triple S attack with 61 mods, so he does have a good opener when there's only one wave or 2 and you want to do single target damage instead of AoE or roll. Raven Raid will be a nice inheritance as well because it hits 2 times with only 3 BP cost. But the problem here is more about this cycling's not working so well because you can only open with either Lantern Path or Noble Cranes and they are not single targets, so another interesting attack is Raven Raid, but this one does not work so well in the newest style because he only opens with either roll or AoE attacks, and then changing to a single target attack does not help much. But the attack itself is pretty nice because it hits 2 times with double elements and it has critical to undead and demon too. Ildon is a farmer specialist. He can either attack once in a wave. If it's the first wave, you use Noble Cranes. If it's on the second wave, you use Tornado Blade Plus. Or you can attack 3 times roll with Lantern Path and do plenty of damage, but he needs to hit critical to really make the difference. If you like characters like SaGa, SaGa is actually better and easier to use because he does not require hitting for critical. There is also another character that will come pretty soon that is in black. And black 3rd style here is another one that tries to inflict critical damage and will also hit for human, but not against undead and demon. They try to cover a little different specialties to be different, but to be honest, all of them are just for farming and you will have different characters for bossing. Sometimes there are banner units that will work for both content and you actually get more utility out of them. And since Ildon is not better than having Arthur, for example, if you summon it for Arthur and now you don't have gens, don't worry, you get more usage out of Arthur than out of Ildon. But Ildon, when used on the right setup, on the right stages, will do plenty of damage and justify his existence. But you can still skip him because in farming you always have alternatives. Well, now I want to talk about other characters that can do roll attacks with either slash or pierce. First, we have Jamil. Jamil can use an attack called Streaming Pierce that deals Pierce and Slash with S power, so he can cover, does a little less damage, but not much far from that. After that, we have the Platinum version of Cordelia that can open with triple S and then keep with B power damage. And then we have Sparrow with his attack called Izuna that has double S power. He needs to heal in order to keep up with roll attacks, but well, it kind of works. As for Road Slash, we have for turn 1 at least the Christmas and Breath Christmas Noel. We also get plenty by Amplify. There is a future version of Grey coming up pretty soon. Hawk as well, so you get plenty. So back to the banner image, is this banner worth summoning for? In my opinion, not much. It will only receive a bronze award. First of all, Rastaban is a strange hybrid unit that besides wheel debuffing, does not have much to cover for the future. What he does is not top tier and people will do it better. We already have replacements inside the game. Then we have Ildon that tries to bring pretty big damage against very specific events and enemies. Because it's too specific, it won't work all the time. That means that it's easy to skip since there are plenty of farmers in the game, right? And then there's Ciato, a very strong boss specialist, but usually we don't bring 2 damage dealers that are focused just on damage in a boss fight. So if you have Darky, at least 2 of his styles, you already have plenty of different combinations and rotations, and Ciato will try to fight for the same spot in boss fights, unless you can bring both. But if you cannot bring both, you have invested on a character that you won't be using at all times. So it reduces the value for those that already have Darky. If you are a new player without Darky, you get more value because he only requires 1 style to be very good. Especially if you are having difficulty with remembrance battles, he will be good for the future. But it's a character without future, so you have to remember that what you have is what you see. I plan on skipping this banner unless I have some luck with my future pools, but most people can easily skip. I believe that New Year's Assholes banner has more value, and Christmas and Press had more value as well. With all that said, this is my opinion. What is yours? Please say here in the comment section. Did you pull? Do you like these characters? I want to hear your opinion. Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon in the next video. Bye.